You're live.
Good evening and welcome to the reorganization meeting of the Township of Parsippany Troy Hills Board of Adjustment. Today is Wednesday, January 13th, 2021 at 7:30 p.m. In accordance with NJSA 10:4-6 at SAC, the Open Public Meetings Act, announcement made that notice of this meeting has been provided by the board secretary to the Daily Record and Star Ledger, published on October 22nd, 2020, by stating the time, place, and date of all regularly scheduled meetings, and by filing a copy with the municipal clerk. This meeting can also be accessed via WebEx with a link found on Parsippany's website, www.parsippany.net. We have already sworn in the 4 reappointed members, Mr. Berkowitz, Mr. Willens, Mr. Joskowitz, and Mr. Parikh. At this point, nominations for chairman will be taken.
Hi, this is Casey Parikh. I would like to nominate Mr. Ayakan for the chairman of the board.
I'd like to second it.
Okay. Are there any other nominations?
Nominations be closed.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, with a motion and second in place for chairman. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Chairman will take over.
Thank you, everyone.
You're welcome.
So are you going to do the rest of the reorganization?
Try to repeat yourself. He's got the Casey, can you mute yourself? Okay, go ahead. Bob?
Are you going to do the rest of the reorganization then, or am I?
I could do it, or
Why don't you just go ahead and do it, because you have everything in front of you. Go ahead.
okay. So we will now take nominations for vice chairperson.
I would like to nominate Nancy Schneider.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
I'm sorry, who seconded that?
Ira King.
Any other nominations? Motion to close nominations.
Move.
Is there a second?
Joskowitz.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? At this point, we are looking to reappoint board secretary, Nora Jolie.
I nominate Nora Jolie. for
Second.
continue as our board
Second,
secretary.
Snyder.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And finally, we have John Chadwick, our planner, Chaz Holloway, our engineer, and Peter King, our attorney.
So moved.
Second, Snyder.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the reorganization meeting has adjourned.
Thanks, everyone. I appreciate it. I look forward to working with the board for the upcoming year.
Same here. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Same here. Thank you.
I would just like to thank all of our volunteer members of the board for their dedication Some people ask me why after 30, this is my 32nd year, why I'm still doing this. And it's a labor of love. I just look forward to these meetings, and sometimes at the end of the night, I want to go bang my head against the wall, but it is truly a labor of love. So with that said, I thank you again for electing as chairman for one more year. Okay, so we have some resolutions. The resolutions 2029, 2033, and 1927. Nora, can everyone vote on all of those resolutions?
No.
They're a little different. Can everybody please mute themselves?
We're getting a lot of feedback.
Feedback.
Mr. Chairman, can I just offer a little tech support to hopefully resolve this issue? If everyone defaults to mute, when you want to speak, all you have to do is hit the space bar, and when you release it, it automatically puts you back on mute. And that way you don't forget, and there's not all this overlap that's causing the feedback.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Okay, so the first two are the same. The second or the third one will be separate.
Nora, I can't vote on any of this, just, right? That's what I thought I saw in our emails, which is fine because I wasn't there.
You're correct.
Okay.
This is Bernie.
Okay, so I'm going to interrupt you. The first two, Berkowitz, Jaskowitz, Parikh, Prasad, Reddy, Willens, and Ira King.
Mr. Berkowitz, you want to?
Adoption of resolutions for application 20:29 and 20:33.
Second.
Any discussion?
Berkowitz,
Yes.
Jaskowitz,
Yes.
Parikh,
Yes.
Reddy,
Yes.
Willens,
Yes.
Ira King.
Yes.
Did Bernie do the first two or just the first one?
First
Did the
two.
first two.
Okay, the third one, Berkowitz, Parikh, Reddy, Willens, and Ira King.
Well, I'm going to abstain on that because I wasn't at one meeting.
I move the
Correct.
adoption of the application 19:27.
Second.
Any discussion? Nora, please call.
Parikh,
Yes.
Reddy,
Yes.
Willens,
Yes.
Ira King.
Yes. Nora, there's no correspondence or any carried cases that we carried or anything?
No, they're not.
Okay, let's go into case, application 2037, Herman and Claire Klink, 11 Greenbrier Road, seeking a C variance to construct a handicapped addition.
Herman and/or Clary Klink, who's going to provide testimony? Who is going to provide testimony in this application?
Have to unmute.
Okay, Herman and Clary, if you can unmute, we can't hear you. Okay, you have your technical, great. Okay, who's going to provide testimony?
Basically, we all are. My name is Rich. I'm a family friend. I'm helping him out with this.
Okay, so you can make the application and you can't represent them. You're not an attorney. If you're a factual witness, then you can provide testimony. Are you going to provide factual testimony?
Yeah,
The owners.
They're the owners of the property.
Okay, the owners will, but I'm talking about you, sir.
Okay, no, I'm just here to help them.
So, Herman and Claire, if you could raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give to the board is the truth, so help you God?
So help me God.
Okay, and you are the owners of the subject property?
Yes.
Correct.
All right, thank you. Mr. Chairman, the owners and applicant are sworn.
Okay,
Mr. and Mrs. Twink, please turn down their volume. We're getting a lot of feedback off it.
So turn down the volume.
okay, let's hope this starts going a little smoother. All right, you want to, according to your application, you want to build a new one-story handicap bedroom over an existing pre-1989 concrete slab measuring 17 feet 8 inches by 17 feet. The variances that you need are for an accessory side yard, pool patio area. You're asking for a 1 foot legalization, and you're asking for impervious coverage of 33.64 where 30 is allowed. Would you please explain your application a little bit so that the board understands exactly what's going on?
Hold on 1 second. I'm sorry. Hold on.
Okay. We're here to approve the addition has been built on the patio.
And nothing else has
Nothing
changed.
has changed in 40 years.
40 years.
So we just don't want to remove anything else.
Can I explain this for them?
Yeah, why don't you translate for them? Okay, you're just translating for them. You're not testifying.
Okay, so the permit was already issued. A handicap accessible bedroom's already been built. The issue was that there was some slight discrepancy in the impervious coverage on the lot, and it ended up being 3 or 4% over. But it's been that way for 40, 50 years. This isn't anything new that's changed. And the idea of the variance here is to memorialize, legalize whatever the pre-existing condition that's been here. They purchased the house in the 70s. The only change was the addition of a pool that was approved in the early 80s, and nothing else has been changed or added since then. And the addition was built on a pre-existing patio that was in the backyard as a handicap addition for Colleen, their daughter.
So how is it discovered and why are they here?
I didn't get that. Sorry.
How is this discovered?
We wanted to build an handicap room for my daughter who's disabled on the downstairs patio that's been there for forever, over 40 years.
You resurveyed the property.
Yes, so we resurveyed the property, and that's how it was discovered.
And how long has the pool been there?
Oh, over 40 years.
If I can, Mr. Chairman, I believe that the pool and the patio is pre-existing, but the addition is something that you want to construct now, correct?
No, the addition's already built.
So everything is already built, the pool, the patio around the pool, and this is just to legalize both the addition, the handicapped addition that was built in the 80s, I think your testimony was?
No, the addition, the permit was issued for the addition several months ago and it's been built already. It was built on the pre-existing slab that was there since the early 80s.
Okay.
So there was no new concrete work, no new foundation, nothing. It was all built on the pre-existing. So Colleen could be on the ground level but she can't be upstairs, so she can't walk.
Okay, so when was that addition constructed, finished, built?
It was September, October.
And did you provide those, the documents to the building department, the drawings?
Yes, and it was approved. They issued the permits pending the memorialization of the when they looked over the zoning, it was slightly over, and they said it's got to go in front of the.
But everything has been inspected by the building department.
Yes.
Excuse me, can I just clarify? So the point being is, you had an existing patio, pool and everything, you built a room above the patio, right? And you got approval to do that, and when they did that, then they came in, so you're not changing the existing coverage, impervious coverage, or the fence, nothing, right?
Nothing.
Okay, thank you very much.
So it sounds like we have a situation that we've lived with for the last 40 years and nobody's complained. And now all of a sudden, because you try to do something good for your daughter, you're faced with coming before this board. Are there any other questions by any members of the board? Are there any members of the public that have any questions of this witness, these witnesses on the testimony given this evening? As far as Mr. Hocker, you see any hands up? Mr. Hocker, you see any hands up for questions?
I do not.
Okay, Mr. and Mrs. Klinke, there's nothing else you'd like to add, right? You've given all the testimony you want to give?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak in opposition to this application, in support of this application? Mr. Hoffer, you see any hands?
No hands are raised.
Okay, will a member of the board make a quick
Mr. Chairman,
recommendation on this?
Mr. Chairman, this is again one of those cases where if you took the water off the calculation, you wouldn't have a variance.
Very good point, Mr. Chadwick. Thank you for forgiving. Someone like to make a recommendation?
Bernie, I'll move the resolution. Well, I recommend it. Can I do both?
Yes.
Recommend
Yes,
we
do
grant
both.
this application. It's really good. Number one, it exists. Number two, it's to help disabled person. And number three, it's de minimis. So I would move application 20:37 that we grant the variance for Herman and Claire Klink at 11 Greenbrier Road, in block 705, lot 11, in the R3 zone. Grant the variance is necessary for the construction of the handicap addition. Was there also a request for, was there something additional to the pool patio?
No.
Because it's in the zoning report.
We have to legalize the other two parts.
I move that we legalize the side yard patio and the impervious coverage.
Second, Johnson.
Any discussion? Nora?
Berkowitz.
Yes.
Doskowitz.
Yes.
Kaplan.
Yes.
Freak.
Yes.
Ready.
Yes.
Snyder.
Yes.
Willens.
Yes.
Hurricane.
Yes. The result, Mr. and Mrs. Klink, is the variance is granted. You're all set now. You're all legal, okay? God
Thank
bless
you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Happy New Year.
Next case is Rita and Pedro Magbatang. Sentencing Drive, C variance to construct.
Pedro and Rita, if you could unmute yourself, please.
Hi, everybody. Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm going to swear you both in. Could you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give before the board is the truth so help you God?
We do.
We do.
And for the record, you're the owners of the subject property?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. You're sworn, Mr. Chairman. The two witnesses are sworn as factual witnesses.
Okay, Mr. and Mrs. Magbatang, you're seeking a 2-foot variance, rear yard and side yard for a shed. I assume that the position of the shed makes sense in terms of the size of your backyard. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, that's correct.
And if you moved it any farther out, it would infringe on your the size of your backyard. Is that correct?
What's that?
What do you mean by that?
You don't want it 6 feet in and from the side. It's going to take up more of your backyard. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's right.
correct.
That's
Yes.
right.
And have you discussed? Or does anybody have any complaints? You notified all your neighbors, right?
Yeah, we
Yes.
did. And yeah, we did. Right.
And
And they have no
nobody
complaints.
said no complaints. Okay.
Yes, yes,
Any other-
thank God.
Thank you. Any other members of the board have any questions of these witnesses? I hear none and see none. Are there any members of the public who have any questions of this witness? Mr. Hofker, if you see anybody, would you let me know?
There are no one.
Thank you. There's nothing else you'd like to add, right, Mr. and Mrs. Magbatang?
Nothing to add.
Nothing to add.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak in opposition to this application, in support of this application? Any hands?
No hands.
Somebody on the board, please make a recommendation.
I will. I'll be
Somebody else?
voting for this. This is de minimis in nature. The shed is positioned in a very justifiable, logical area, and it enhances the residents' ability to enjoy their property. I'll be voting for it. Let me just go into the application.
Go ahead, you can do it.
Okay. In the case of 20:42, Rita and Pedro Magmitan at 193 Centerton Drive, Block 252, Lot 11, Zone R-4, that we grant a C variance to construct the shed, or actually to legalize the shed, right? To legalize the shed and the 10-foot by 12-foot concrete pad.
Second ready.
Any discussion? Nora, call the roll.
Berkowitz,
Yes.
Jaskowitz,
Yes.
Kaplan,
Yes.
Parikh,
Yes.
Ready,
Yes.
Snyder,
Yes.
Willand. Unmute yourself.
Yes,
your
sorry
hand.
about that. Yeah,
There you go. And Ira came.
Yes, the result is the variance is granted. Mr. and Mrs. Magbatang, you're all set. You'll get notice from the zoning, office that you're okay. Good luck.
Thank you
Yeah,
very
thank you
much.
very much,
Thank you very much.
guys.
Thank you.
We appreciate the approval. Okay.
So we can leave now, sir?
Yes, you can.
Thank you so much. Have a good night, sir.
Probably
Good night,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Probably
Happy New
something
Year.
on TV. Happy New Year. Okay, let's call case 2038 Marie Gaddy, 62 Ludlow Road. C variance to construct an addition and legalize.
Is she on? Is Is Gaddy on?
Gaddy has to be moved over. She logged in through the public link. Hold on.
Okay.
Mr. Willens, are you still playing golf?
No.
I played the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, rub it in.
Rub it in. The advantages of Ocean County.
Well, you could invite me down there to play, you know, but
Okay, so she called in. We're going to unmute her. We won't see her.
Hello?
Is this Marie Gaddy?
Yes, it is.
Can you raise your right hand?
Yes.
You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give before the board is the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
And you're the
I
owner of
also-
the Are you the
Yes,
owner
I
of the
am.
subject property, 62 Ludlow Road?
Yes, I am.
Okay, and you're the only witness who's going to provide any testimony?
No, I have Mark Swanson here, who is the gentleman who's going to put the sunroom on my deck.
Okay, so he's the contractor?
Yes, he is.
Sir, could you raise your right hand?
I have.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give before the board is the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And for the record, can you state and spell your name?
Mark Swanson, MarkSwanson.
And the name of your company?
Leisure Living.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, the two witnesses, the homeowner as well as the contractor, are sworn.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Gaddy, you're looking to legalize a shed that has a 1 foot side yard and a 0.5 rear yard. You also need a variance for yards and courts open decks of 29.41 where 24 is permitted, and building coverage of 26.56 where 20 is allowed and 24.36 is existing.
Hello, are you there?
Can you give us a little background on the shed? Was the shed there when you purchased the property, or did you put the shed in?
No, I put the shed there. I've been on this property for 43 years, and it's a Rubbermaid shed. It's about 7 by 10. It's always been there in the corner. As you can see, it's a small lot. It's 60 by 100. So, you know, the yard is not that big. So of course we put it, you know, toward the back.
Has there been any controversy with your neighbors, either to the rear or to the side, with regard to
No.
the shed?
No. Not at all.
And the other thing that you want to do is you want to put a sunroom on, and I assume this
Yes.
is for your family enjoyment. Is this a screened-in room?
It does have, it will have windows. It will have windows. No heat, but no heat, no, you know, there won't be any, it's basically a 3 seasons room that he's putting on top of an existing deck.
Okay, so and you have noticed all your neighbors, correct?
Yes.
Any other questions by the board? Any members of the public have any questions on this, of these witnesses on testimony given?
No hands are
Laura,
raised.
Thank you. There's nothing else you'd like to add, is that correct, Ms. Gaddy?
No, it's just that I was, the reason I would do it is I have no trees on my property. The deck is in the sun the whole day long and I can't enjoy it because it's too hot.
That's good. Well, we hope this works out for you.
Well, thank you very
Are
much.
there
I
any-
appreciate it.
Okay. Are any members of the public who wish to speak in opposition to this application, in support of this application?
No hands are raised.
Thank you. Can I get a recommendation from somebody quickly?
Yeah, it's de minimis in nature. It's for the person to enjoy their property. I'll be voting for it.
Resolution, someone?
I'll do it. Application 20:38, Marie Gaddy, 62 Ludlow Road, Lot 301, Lot 11.1, Zone R4. Recommend granting a C variance to construct an addition and legalize a shed.
Second, Kaplan.
Thank you. Any discussion? Laura, call the roll.
Berkowitz,
Yes.
Yes.
Kaplan,
Yes.
Parikh,
Yes.
Reddy,
Yes.
Snyder,
Yes.
Lillens,
Yes.
Ira Kane.
Yes. The result is the variance is granted. Ms. Gaddy, you'll be getting notification from the zoning board as soon as we memorialize this. It will be next week, most likely. So you can, Nora will advise you. Have a nice evening.
Thank you very much. You also. Good night.
Good night.
Okay, it's called case 2040.
Mr. Hang,
Yep, speaking. Hi.
do you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give before the board is the truth to help you God?
I do.
And for the record, you're the owner of 159 Wall Avenue,
Yes, I am.
and you'll be providing factual testimony to this board tonight on the application.
Yes, my architect is also joining us.
Who?
Hi, how are you? Hi, how are you? Javier Fuentes.
Who is this?
Hi, I'm Javier Fuentes. I'm the architect for my client.
Okay, sir, then, Mr. Chairman, the applicant is sworn. I'm going to swear the architect in. Sir, could you raise your right hand? Do you swear and affirm the testimony you're about to give before the board is the truth to help you God?
I do.
And, are your licenses as an architect in effect?
Yes, licensed in the state of New Jersey.
And you've provided testimony before either this board or other board?
This was my first board.
Okay. But all your licenses are in full force and effect. And how long have you been practicing architecture and providing drawings for various clients?
Yes, it's been a year now. I've been licensed, and I've been in the field for 8 years since my bachelor's degree.
Mr. Chairman, I believe he is qualified as an architect.
I think that's fine. And Mr. Fuentes, welcome to the world of testifying. Okay, so we're looking to put a small addition, which I'm a little bit confused about the size of the property. It says it's 15,000 square feet.
Right.
It's an R3 zone, which requires 15,000 square feet. And it just doesn't look like the building occupies that much of the property. Oh, I'm sorry. It's impervious coverage because of the size of the driveway. Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so the building is de minimis when it it comes to the size of the property, it's the impervious coverage. You're not requiring any side yard setbacks, rear yard setbacks, only the impervious coverage. There's a note in here from our principal engineer with regard to drainage. You'll make sure that whatever stormwater runoff don't create any additional problems for the neighboring property. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's correct. Okay. Are there any other questions by the board? Any other questions by the board? I don't hear any. Are there any members of the public that have any questions of these witnesses?
Mr. Irekin, I do have a question.
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
Excuse me, before you start, can Mr. Hung please lower your volume? You're causing feedback.
All right, so my question is, if we feel that there's going to be a potential for a runoff problem into the neighbor's properties, can we get more information about the likelihood of that? I'd hate to approve something where we know we're potentially creating a problem before we approve it.
Right. Yeah, I understand. I have a sketch that I have drawn, but basically we're going to be connecting to the existing gutter. There's currently a gutter that connects to the ground. And since we're going to be excavating to put in a foundation, we're going to have a drain line that connects to that, and it'll connect to the downspout. So everything will then be able to shed water and mitigate that from dispersing into anybody's yard.
Thank you.
Is that acceptable, Mr. Kaplan?
Sounds it.
Mr. Kaplan, as a condition, would you like the town engineer to review the drainage?
That would make me, and I would imagine all the neighbors, feel better. So yes, thank you for that suggestion.
Yeah, I mean, as I read, this is Nancy Snyder, as I read in the engineer's report, I mean, should there be a storm runoff issue even in the future after this is built, this applicant is going to address it pronto, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I appreciate that in there, but I have a hard time saying we're going to approve this. We have been alerted to a potential problem, and we're not taking any efforts to address it before it happens. Well, that's my concern.
So what I will do, if this is the board's pleasure, I'll put that into the resolution that one of the conditions is that the town engineer review it and that the applicant will comply with all the conditions and recommendations of the town engineer.
Right, even post-project, you know what I'm saying? Even post-construction.
Absolutely, and we will be happy to communicate and coordinate with the engineer to make sure that we do address that in any way possible.
Does that satisfy all the board members? Any questions? Any other questions by the board? Any members of the public have any questions of these witnesses?
No hands raised.
Someone like to make a recommendation? Someone like to make a recommendation on this?
Being that the applicant has agreed to avoid the problem of water runoff, I will be agreeing and recommending positive vote.
So Jessica, what you want to do the resolution to?
Sure, application 20:40, 159 Ball Avenue, block 14, lot R, zone R3. Recommend granting a T variance to construct an addition and deck.
Second ready.
Any discussion? Nora, call the roll.
Berkowitz,
Yes.
Jaskowitz,
Yes.
Kaplan,
Yes.
Parikh,
Yes.
Ready,
Yes.
Snyder,
Yes.
Willens,
Yes.
Hurricane.
Yes. The result is the variance is granted. We'll memorialize this at our next meeting and you'll be free to proceed. Have a nice evening, everyone.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Okay, let's call case, 1907, Duva.
Who will be providing testimony on this case or representing the applicant? Duva, is there an attorney or any professionals who will be representing this client, this applicant?
Hello, can you hear me? This is Mr. Duva. Good evening, this is Mr. Duva.
How are you, sir? Will you be providing testimony on this application?
I have an attorney, Mr. William Rush, and also a planner.
And I don't see them on the app screen. Are they here? Anyone?
I see Mr. Costa, who is our engineer. I don't see our attorney nor our planner.
Okay, so you need your attorney, your corporation, correct?
Yes, and he was planning on being on this call tonight. He's the one that sent me the link for the call. I spoke with him before. If it's okay with the board, can I just send him a text message and see if he's having a problem?
Is he here? Are we looking at him?
He just came on. I just see him on now. Mr. Rush, unmute.
Oh, good evening. Are we onto our application already?
Yes.
Yes, you're up. Mr. Rush, you're up. So,
Okay.
the chairman has called your case. Do you want to put on a little preamble as to what you're looking for and explain to the board a thumbnail of what's going on and then get into your case and call your experts, please?
Yes, I would be happy to. I just want to see, are my experts on? Is Mr. Costa already on? Yes, Mr. Costa's on already, and then I will also have our planner available right after that. So, okay, so I'm prepared to start. Should I begin?
Yes, please.
You can proceed. You can proceed.
Great, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is William Rush. I represent the applicant in this matter, Bruno Duva, who is the owner of the property located at 264 New Road. This application actually pertains to two parcels of land, 264 New Road, which is block 767, lot 26, and 250 New Road, which is block 767, lot 25. The applicant is seeking site plan approval and use relief to expand the parking and outdoor storage currently permitted on 264 New Road to the neighboring property 250 New Road. 250 New Road is owned by Dr. Kassem Farhat and Dr. Elizabeth Lammer. 250 New Road was approved to be utilized as a dentist office through resolution 03:77 on December 10th, 2003. Upon completion of the dentist office and the parking lot that was built on 250 New Road, the property had approximately 9,000 square feet of unused and underdeveloped property remaining in the rear. It's on this underdeveloped and unused 9,000 square feet that the applicant is seeking to expand the parking and storage from the existing business on 264 New Road. There's currently a lease in place between the owners of 250 and 264 that governs the use of the property at the rear of 250 New Road. Also, there are two prior resolutions for the properties that affect both of these properties. There's resolution 96:59, which was from 1997 for 264 New Road. And there's resolution 03:77 for 250 New Road, which was approved in 2003. These resolutions have already addressed and approved all the necessary bulk variances for this development. Essentially, this application is seeking use variance relief to permit the existing business on 264 New Road to expand its parking onto 250 New Road. With that background, I'm at the place now where I'd like to call my first witness, who's engineer Robert Costa.
Mr. Rush, I just have one question. Is your client going to purchase that? Are you going to subdivide that other piece of property?
No, they're looking just to expand it and use it through the use of a lease.
Okay, so so that just so the board understands that you're trying to get variance approval for a piece of property that's not owned by your client, but that will be leased by your client.
Correct.
So what happens when, is that lease a 99-year lease or a long-term lease, or how many years is that lease for?
I believe that current lease is probably for 5 years, but we're looking to expand it. Obviously, the use of the property is going to be subject to the lease and the owner of 250's permission to be using that property pursuant to the lease.
And after that lease expires, if it's not renewed, what happens to this variance?
I assume the variance, like any other variance, will run with the property, but it's still going to be subject to the lease agreements between the property owners.
That's correct. So then the property that your client doesn't own will have the variance on it.
Correct.
So they'll be able to do whatever this variance grants them, which is what, parking and outside storage?
On the rear of 250, are you talking about? That's the property that my client is, yeah. They currently have that use through the variance that was approved through the resolution 0377.
So then if that variance relief was already granted to that other property, what?
We're looking to expand the parking from 264 onto 250, which is expansion of a non-conforming use, because the use on 264 was approved in 1997 with the resolution.
Just so the board understands that.
Okay.
Mr. King, I just have a question, and I would imagine that this is permissible, but someone can request a variance for a piece of property they don't own?
The owner of that property has to give them the right to do this, and I believe that they did do that. Mr. Rush, in your papers, I believe you gave the consent of that prior property owner, correct?
That's correct, Mr. King. Yes, Dr. Farhat has given permission for this application to go forward, and he's aware of this application going forward.
So,
do you have anything in writing on that?
Yes, there was actually part of the application that was originally submitted was with Dr. Farhat's approval.
I believe all of that's in order. I looked through it. I believe all of that's in order.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to correct one statement. Hello, I'd like to correct one statement. The Dennis, when that was approved, did not have a parking lot.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the second half of that statement.
The dentist's office, when that was approved, did not have an approval for the parking area that you are proposing under this application.
Okay, well, actually, from reading the resolution.
The dentist's office in itself was a use variance.
Okay. Understood.
So are you saying, John, no one has approval for the extra parking?
Correct. That's why they
on the dentist property. By way of history, I mean, John, you were involved in this, weren't you, when this was happening? This was a two-step process. The property that Mr. Duva owns, I believe, if I remember correctly, there's a house in the front, and there was a proposal to put a building and parking in the rear. there was a lot of controversy over the fact that there was residential property to the rear of this subject property. Parking, I believe, in the building to the rear, if I remember correctly. Does that sound familiar, John?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And then the dentist office, as Mr. Chadwick says, was a use variance. There was no other variance granted, to my knowledge. Is that correct, John?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So that's the history of the property. There was a lot of controversy with regard to the owner of the apartments. Do you remember this, John? With regard to trucks idling and noise, et cetera, et cetera. So I think you're going to have to make sure in your testimony that these issues are not going to come up again. I don't know if the owner of the residential property is attending this meeting. If that person is here, maybe they could raise their hand so Nora could acknowledge it.
Just so the record is clear, I was contacted by an attorney, Stephen Cochran, for the owner of the apartment complex behind there. He indicated that there were some certain concessions that they were looking for from my client and indicated that they may be appearing as objectors tonight. I don't see them here tonight, but we did reach an agreement on some of the concessions that they requested.
Are you going to discuss those concessions?
I was gonna wait till the end of the application to see first and foremost if our application is even going to be approved. If our application is going to be approved, there are conditions that I'm willing to concede to put into the resolution that I had made a verbal agreement with Mr. Cochran regarding his client's requests.
If I can interrupt for a moment, he is in as an attendee.
Mr. Cochran is available. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just not sure why couldn't he disclose what the concessions are? Why do we have to wait until after the?
I can disclose them now.
Well, I was going to say let the attorney for the neighbor make his presentation if he feels it's necessary. If it's really important that we find out now, then I'm sorry. And Mr. Rush is willing to disclose it.
Sure, I have no objection to disclosing them. Let me just find his email to me. He wanted to confirm that they're going to comply with ordinances that require the trucks idle no longer than 3 minutes or 15 minutes if temperatures are below 25 degrees, which we've agreed to. No active trucks outside repairs before 6 a.m. and after 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. We're requesting to be reduced to 5 a.m. and 7 p.m. Monday through Friday with no activity conducted on the weekends. We're in agreement with that. They're also looking for the property to be maintained in an orderly fashion, which obviously we agreed to. And they asked that we replace the chain link fence with a 10-foot steel safety wall at the rear of the property. We did not agree to that. We agreed that we would, if it is my client's fence that's in question, my client said he'll repair or replace the fence depending upon obviously what needs to be done. And if they would like privacy slats placed in the chain link fence, we're happy to do that as well. But I don't even know what a 10-foot steel safety wall is, what it would look like, what it would cost, or any other relief that it might trigger. So obviously we're not agreeing to that. So out of the 4 requests, we're I say we're agreeing to 3.5 of them.
Why don't we proceed then?
Okay. So on any prior questions, I would like to call Mr. Costa at this time, who is our engineer.
Sir, if you could raise your right hand. You swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give before the board's true so help you God?
I do.
And for the record, can you state and spell your name?
Absolutely. For the record, my name is Robert Louis Costa, Costa, 325 South River Street in Hackensack, New Jersey. licensed professional engineer, 34702, professional planner, 4639.
And all your
Thank you,
licenses,
Mr. King.
all your licenses are in full force and effect?
Yes,
And
I
you
was
have
too
been-
cheap to, I was too cheap to actually renew North Carolina, but I believe I actually renewed Pennsylvania. But I'm not
Very
sure.
good.
But New Jersey, we're good.
And you've been qualified in both either this court or other courts in the state of New Jersey?
I have. I'm currently the town engineer in River Ridge, planning board engineer, city of Englewood. I think Pagoda I actually got last night. I wasn't even there. I think there's a couple other places. Your esteemed engineer, Mr. King, to the upper right-hand corner in the screen, Mr. Holloway. I haven't seen him in a long time. Chaz, good evening tonight, but yes.
Congratulations, Mr. Chairman. This engineer is sworn and qualified. Thank you, Mr. Costa.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, my testimony will be brief because apparently I'm not getting paid by the hour and it's a lump sum contract, so I will be in minutes. I have very little to say. I went to the site yesterday. I took photos. My client, Mr. Duva, who's in the lower left-hand screen, needs to clean the property. And I think that was the argument from the adjacent property owner. And I believe that is true. There's some debris on the site. There's some tires. There's some, it looks like an old cab or something. That all exists. And I think, Mr. Rush, what you said earlier, you've agreed to all of that. As far as fencing, I'm not sure exactly what that means also. My recommendation to the board, and I think there was some correspondence back and forth this afternoon, maybe the board, if you can put some evergreen landscaping, arborvitae, something like that. I'm not sure how many deer are in the area in this place. This was approved in 1997. There's an expansion of roughly, give or take, 5,000 square feet, 4,500, 5,000 square feet on the rear of the dentist property. That my client has now parked some vehicles. People come in, they park their cars, they get in the trucks, they leave. When I was there was some trucks there, it was limited. And I guess at the end of the day, the trucks come back and they park there overnight. Mr. Rush, I think there was some questions about idling, if there's any idling. I'm sure the board knows, Mr. King, I'm sure you know, Mr. Holloway. It's a state law. The diesel trucks can't idle for longer, I believe, than it's possibly, I think it's 3 minutes or 15 minutes. So certainly they have to comply with the laws in the state of New Jersey. Other than that, I think it's a pretty simple application. I know Chaz had a couple of questions as far as whether it was a major development, minor development, but again, all of this is happening today. You're in an industrial area. New road is extremely well traveled because you're between Route 80, Route 46, and 280. And the majority of the area surrounding it is industrial in nature and commercial. Other than that, I don't know what else to say. It's roughly 40,000 square feet, his property. There is a house in the front. There were people living in the front, and there's commercial in the rear. The dentist, there was nobody in his parking lot yesterday. It didn't look like it was open. And in the rear of the property, it's fenced. And this is the area, roughly 4,500 square feet, that my client is using for the storage of the equipment. Other than that, that's pretty much the application. There's no new driveways. There's no new improvements on the site. There's no new improvements on the roadway. Basically, that's it. And again, I know there's a planner that I think that's going to testify after me, but based on what I saw yesterday, I think it certainly blends into the character of the neighborhood. It's very commercial in nature. And again, I think there's some improvements that need to be done on the property. And if the board approves this application, I think they should be part of the resolution of approval. And I think that would help the neighbors in the back.
Mr. Costa, how many vehicles are going to be parked on this property?
Again, I don't know that question. I think the planner would. Yesterday when I was there were 4 dump trucks, tandem dump trucks. It looked like there was one cab as you're looking towards the rear of the property to the right. And again, there was some tires. There was some debris that I think needs to get taken out of there.
Mr. Costa, is it asphalt back there, or is it?
It is not. It looks like DGA, compacted DGA that's there. At one point, maybe it was gravel, but right now there's fines that are in it.
Is there any drainage issues?
I didn't notice any yesterday. There was some ponding closer to the building, but I didn't see any runoff. I went around the entire property. I took some photos. They probably didn't even know who I was because there was nobody in the rear. There was nobody in the building. There was only one gentleman who came, got in his car and left and never questioned me. But I didn't see any runoff or any dirt leaving the property to the north, to the west, or to the south.
Mr. Costa, your plans submitted for this application, do they indicate that there's ample parking for at least over 20 large-sized vehicles on that property?
I would say there is. And again, this isn't speculation. My client runs the business there. So obviously it's operating as we speak. So I don't think there's any indication that he can't operate. It's not like we're coming before you to say, we're proposing this. It exists. So his operation exists. This is what he does. He is the end user. So I think it's in his best interest to make sure it works. And in my opinion, based on what I saw yesterday, it's a construction, it's a construction company. And it seems like it's working, with the caveat that I think it does have to get cleaned up slightly. And again, I think some buffering should take place. You do have apartments behind you. You do have residential. It's very close to the industrial zone. And I think if I was on the board, if I was a voting member, I would request my client to put in some buffering, again, just to protect the neighbors. But that would be my recommendation to the board.
Could you also give us a little more information as to the things that you think need to be improved? You mentioned tires cleaned up.
Well, there were tires in the rear of the property. And again, I don't know if it's been there a while. I was only there yesterday. My staff was there months and months ago. I guess with COVID, we haven't been here in some time. I guess some of the meetings got canceled. I physically went to the site yesterday, and I believe the attorney representing the apartments, I believe is it Cochran?
Yeah, Steve Cochran.
He sent a memo or an email yesterday afternoon. And again, I think that was one of his concerns also, that there's some debris there. And again, I don't think Mr. Duva would be upset with that. Certainly, I don't think it's that big of an undertaking, and it certainly can be accomplished.
Well, a question. What is the material in the parking lot of the new lot where he wants to put the equipment? I mean, is it paved? Is it going to be paved?
It's right now, it is not paved. It looks like it's DGA, in my opinion. It looks like just a compacted stone dust. It's very hard. There were no ruts in there. And again, the tandem dump trucks that were there was no rutting. So it had to be there for quite some time. I don't think it was put there a couple of days ago. And again, there was absolutely no ponding, with the exception adjacent to the building. The building has some overhead doors in the back. There's an entry on the side. The building itself is very nice. And again, there's a single family home in the front, and it appeared that there are people living there, because there were some people outside, but I didn't go up and introduce myself.
Thank you.
When you say people living, you're talking about 264 or 250?
That would be 264.
Yes,
in the front.
the White
It's
House.
264.
Yes.
There's two buildings on 264. So
Right,
there's
yes,
a house
there
in
are.
the front. There's a commercial building in the back. There's a parking lot in the back.
Right,
My understanding, that was all approved back in 1997.
right.
The adjacent property is a dental office. There was nobody there. There was nobody in the parking lot. There was nobody in the building. That's paved. That's completely fenced. And then the property runs deeper. And beyond that fence line, my client was utilizing that property roughly, I'm going to say about 4,500 square feet, give or take.
So what changes? Because you're already there. And then, like, as you say, you keep saying few tires. I think it's a lot more than just a few tires. It seems like the like a little quadrant of that piece of property that is in back of 250 is likely where the tires are. But I guess my real question is that, with the variance under consideration from the board, what changes? You're already there. And so what changes? That back fence, that white fence that is at the end of the dentist's parking lot to where you are, or your client's already storing vehicles on the opposite side of the fence. What changes? Does it become more intensified in regards to the vehicles coming in and out and idling? What changes?
I
Already
can't tell you. I can't tell you what the changes are. I can only tell you what I saw yesterday. And again, there's a planner that's going to testify, Mr. McDonough behind me, who will certainly testify on that. What I saw yesterday was it looks as if cars come in, the employees come in, they park their cars, they get in their trucks, and I guess they leave. Because the majority of the site was empty. With the exception of the back corner closer to the apartments, that would be the northwest corner. There was some debris, some tires. It looked like an old cab, possibly, that was there. And again, I don't know if that's what the issue is with the apartments, but that would be my recommendation, to clean that up and then buffer that corner out where the apartments are. That would be my recommendation, again, to the board. And I think my client would be willing to do so.
Maybe I could just give some clarification to Ms. Snyder's question as to what's changing. Nothing is really changing. What spurred this application, as Mr. Costas testified to, is that this operation is already in place. And there were summons issued for violations because they started this process without the actual necessary approvals. So there were summons and there were violations that had to be addressed prior to getting to this point. And now my client, once they were summoned and realized that they needed this board's approval, is now coming before this board for approval. So nothing's really changing. They kind of put the cart in front of the horse, and now they're basically coming back and asking for permission.
So the thing is changing is they're already doing it, but they haven't been approved to do it. Now they want to be approved.
Correct.
Got it.
Mr. Holloway, I have a question regarding the plan that was submitted. Has a note on it that states the gravel area was not counted towards the calculation as it is not impervious. If it's compacted, I just wanted to either update the zoning table and/or I had a question. I just want to confirm that there was no drainage problem.
The only thing I didn't see any, as far as, well, obviously it's in rain. The only thing I can tell you, the property to the south is low and wet. There was standing water in the property to the south. I'm not sure if it's wetlands or not. So I think if anything is draining, it's draining in that direction. And it's wooded. That's all I could say. As far as the runoff itself, I don't know if it's affecting, I don't think it's affecting the properties to the north or to the west. If anything, any drainage probably either pools on site or goes to the south. But that area is very low and depressed. And I don't think that's going to affect any other properties. It's almost like that's the creation of the drainage ditch or the drainage detention pond, or literally a wetland there. That's what I noticed yesterday.
I would ask that if the board was to approve it, that it be subject to updating the zoning table to not have the gravel listed as an impervious area. Or as a pervious area.
I was going to say, Mr. Holloway, I didn't quite understand that. You're considering this as impervious area or not? This compacted.
I based on the testimony, I would say that the area is compacted, be considered compacted. So it wouldn't be a typical gravel drainage area.
It's not.
So you're saying consider it impervious, Chaz, right?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think we have
Again,
another.
Mr. Chairman, there's no fighting here. There's no question that area in the back is well compacted. There's large trucks that run on it. It's not rutted. Chaz, I certainly agree with you. But again, I don't think it's creating a drainage nuisance to the neighbors. It's not what I witnessed yesterday. In the event it is, I will certainly work with your engineer, and I'm sure Mr. Duva will correct if there is any issues, to make sure that it is corrected, that it doesn't impact the adjacent properties.
And in the meantime, we can just update the zoning table to
No problem.
take the
Absolutely,
note
no
off.
problem. Okay.
Can I interrupt 1 second? The discussion has led to another issue, and you know the impervious surface expansion was illegal. They got summons for it. That's why they're here. But the other issue is described is whether or not they've encroached on a wetland area. And I haven't heard any testimony as to whether or not there is or is not wetlands adjacent part of this site.
Mr. Chadwick, with all due respect, that's adjacent to the 264 property. The property in question is further north. It's in the rear of the dentist's office. The property that's being used was approved in 1997. So all the approvals and all the use was back in 97. I believe we're here tonight for the property to the north, which is the rear of the dental office, which is
It's exactly
a
what I
considerable
was
distance
talking
away
about.
from what I'm talking about.
That's exactly what I was talking about. The area that you encroached on. Your
Right,
client
that's why
encroached.
I'm saying, that's why we're here tonight, with all due respect. But where I'm saying
Right.
it's low and it's wooded is to the south, not to the north.
Well, I've been out there a number of times over the years, and I think there has to be someone says there is no wetlands or wetland transition areas in this part of the site, this part of the project.
Well, there isn't. The property, even if it's dedicated as a wetland, it would be a 50-foot buffer. But again, in 1997, this was approved. The improvements went in. My client
I'm
is
not
operating on
talking
it.
about 97. I'm talking about the reason you're here is your client built something with not approvals.
I understand that, and obviously that's why we're here. I understand that there were violations, and that's why we're here tonight seeking relief. Again, what I testified to was the property to the south, not the property to the north. That's all I want to clarify for the record. If he's done something wrong, he knows that. He submitted an application, he hired attorneys, he hired engineers, he hired planners. We're here to seek relief for him to operate behind the dental office, roughly 4,500 square feet. The board could say no, the board could say yes with conditions. But whether you say no or yes, yes, there's no question he did what he did. And he did it without approvals. And that's why we're here tonight. I say this to a lot of people. If there was no lack of violators, I'd probably only have half of my business today. And that's why we're here seeking relief. Maybe he can get on later on, tell him why he did what he did or why the dentist did what he did. I don't know those answers. I can only tell you what I witnessed yesterday. We did some plans, and we're here to seek relief. We're in an industrial zone. I described some of the property, and Mr. McDonough will do the rest. And again, I don't want to.
You're not really in an industrial zone. You're not. With all due respect, I mean, there are residential units in this area. You make it seem like we're in Secaucus. This is not Secaucus.
No, I didn't say that.
And secondly, I would appeal in light of all the conversation around, the flooding and water and everything. I think there's enough experience on this board to know that New Road and to a degree Edwards has issues in regards to water and drainage.
Okay.
So, I mean, you make it seem like it's
I never said that.
And I'm not so sure
I
this
don't
is
want
accurate.
look, I'm not here to argue. I'm here, obviously, for my client. What I said, and I'll go back on my testimony. There is residential behind you, and you're between an industrial zone, and it's very commercial. New Road is heavily traveled, and there are a lot of industrial buildings, and there is commercial. But behind here is an apartment building and there's residents, and I understand that. And I said earlier, it needs to be cleaned up and it should be buffered. That's how I started my testimony. And again, that would be my recommendation to this board, and my client is willing to do so. I'm not trying to sugarcoat anything, no sleight of hand here. He operates a commercial business. He was allowed to operate a commercial business in 1997, and he expanded it. And if he expanded it incorrectly, we're here to try to make it better. That's all. Nothing more, nothing less. And I'm not trying to. Parsippany is a great town, and I'm not trying to say anything against the community or anything else.
Jump in here for a second. As part of Resolution 9659, which was dated for July 9th, 1997, it was a continuation of the original approval. There was a finding of fact with respect to the wetlands, and it was found in number 3, subsection A, which says that the engineer at the time indicated that the lands adjacent to subject property were considerable wetlands and required buffer areas. In essence, therefore, the existing buffer of the adjacent properties provides more than adequate buffer area and is therefore in full compliance with the spirit of the ordinance. So in 1997, there was a finding that there were wetlands and that the buffer was sufficient to keep the property in compliance with the ordinance with respect to the wetlands.
But now your client has encroached on that property, correct?
I'm sorry?
Now your client has encroached on the property, the other property.
No, this is 264. This is the property that was approved in 1997. The encroachment is going from 264 on to 250. 264 is remaining exactly the same.
I understand, but expanded use by encroachment, and that resolution did not contemplate that.
Again, I'm not an engineer, but the resolution in 2003 with respect to 250 New Road does not make any reference to wetlands. Again, I'm not saying there aren't any. I'm just saying I can only go by what I have in front of me. And the resolution from 2003 does not make any reference to wetlands or does not contain any restrictions with respect to any possible wetlands affecting that property. I think, as Mr. Costa testified to, is that the wetlands area is more to the south of 264. And what we're looking to do is expand northward into 250. So further, the expansion is further away from what, according to the 97 resolution, is existing wetlands.
And Chaz, has any of the wetlands statutes, laws been modified or changed since 1997?
The ultimate decision for whether wetlands exist would be through the NJDEP, through a presence absence, and/or the quality of any buffers. So the governing source on something like that would be the NJDEP.
And you usually get like a delineation letter or some type of a letter from them?
There's two ways you can go about. There's a presence absence determination where they just give you a letter that yes, there exists or doesn't exist. And then if you think there's more than that, they will come out and verify what the surveyors put in as flagged wetland areas.
And from the application, are you satisfied that there are no wetlands issues here, or would you want further information?
Well, we could additional information about exactly where it is, so we don't impact the buffer, would be warranted.
Wouldn't the town engineer know that?
There's commercially available the tax maps and the flood zone maps. I don't have it right with me right now for this area. It can be provided. Maybe Mr. Costa can provide that information, and we could assess the site and whether the wetlands are an issue or not.
Right. Well, and again, just to clarify the record, I'm talking about the lot to the south that was wooded. But again, the expansion is to the north, and it's probably over more than 100 feet away. Just for clarity of the record. So the lot in question is behind the dental office. I'm sorry. Okay.
So we can get evidence of no wetlands or not? What is the answer? Or do we need evidence? Or is there some alternative that we can do? Can we grant the variance subject to the applicant producing a letter saying that there are no wetlands? What, Mr. Holloway, what do we do here? You guys are.
Yes, that would be sufficient in this case if it really is, if it's that far away. The typical buffer is 50 feet.
So Chaz, what would you require the applicant to submit to make it a condition of the resolution?
If they submit a plan showing the property line versus where the wetlands are. The distance would be helpful. It's an ordinary wetland, it doesn't require a higher buffer than 50 feet.
Okay.
Okay, are there any other questions of this witness on the testimony given this evening by the board? Any members of the public have any questions? Nora, any hands?
No hands raised.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay,
Thank you.
Mr. Rush, call your next
Chairman.
witness.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a question, if I might. How many vehicles are on the site or construction vehicles are on the site at any one time? And should we be limiting it?
I believe the tenant uses approximately, as far as vehicles with respect to the both properties and parking, approximately 20 to 25 vehicles. That's currently
We're
was being
dealing with a
used today.
specific size piece of property. Should we limit the number of vehicles that are allowed on this property so it doesn't become overcrowded?
I know we have no objection to a limit of 25 vehicles, but we wouldn't object to that if the board sees fit.
Is 25 vehicles a reasonable number? Who can tell us that?
That's currently what's being used there, and based upon, maybe Mr. Costa could just provide more information based upon the square footage and the trucks that he witnessed at the site.
Well, maybe
Again,
can your client provide some testimonies to that too?
My client could provide that, the fact that they're using those trucks there. I mean, obviously, he's not an engineer. He cannot provide, he can't break it down per square
No, but
footage.
he knows how many vehicles he has there from time to time or.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm aware that there's approximately 20 to 25 vehicles there on a daily basis.
That's my question.
And I'm happy to put my client on if you'd like to question him directly as well.
At some point in time, I think that'd be good.
It might be helpful if your client maybe testified and explained his business in a little bit more detail. It's been almost 25 years since his original application. I remember the application, I remember construction equipment, but maybe he can explain a little bit about the ins and outs and, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, I mean, I'm happy to call him now if you'd like to hear him now, or would you like to hear the planner first and then my client? I have no objection either way.
It's your case. Go right ahead. Do as you can do.
Okay, at this time, then
Chairman, members of the board, thank you.
Then I'll call the owner of the property, Bruno Duva. Mr. Duva is the owner of 264 New Road.
Mr. Duva, raise your right hand. You swear affirm testimony you're about to give before the board's true self you got?
I do.
And for the record, you're the owner of the property and the leaseholder of the encroached property that you encroached on, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, Mr. Duva, obviously you've been on this call all evening. You've heard some of the questions. Why don't you give the board some background as to the development of the property, the use over the years, and the current use of the property, including the number of trucks on the site?
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you tonight. As Mr. Rush has explained earlier, the property was approved for the use back in 1997. Myself and my father at that time were running this operation. The operation expanded. There's additional trucks there that have been being parked on both lots, lot 264 or address 264 and address 250. the vehicles, as Mr. Rush said, there's approximately 25 vehicles that are parked in the rear of the property. Those vehicles go out during the day, sometime between 5 and 6 in the morning. They come back at 7 p.m. to be stored and parked. Any type of mechanical work that has to be or is required on the vehicles happens within the garage that's also on the property. So there isn't any work that's being done outside. Any work to the vehicles is being done on the inside of the garage. This application isn't asking for any change. We're asking to expand the operation, which has already been expanded.
Now, Mr. Duva, do you have any knowledge of the wetlands issue that was raised earlier from the application back in 1997?
Yes, the wetland on the south side adjacent property, there's no wetland that's on the 264 property, and I'm not familiar with the wetland that's on the 250 property.
Is there wetland on 250? Do you even know that to be fact?
I'm not aware of any wetland on that property.
Okay.
I just have a question with regard to your 25 vehicles. Are they all 25 pickup trucks?
Excuse me?
Are they 25 pickup trucks? What kind of vehicles are they?
They're tandem trucks, they're dump trucks.
And what is your operation? Is it construction or your waste removal?
It's transportation. It's not waste removal, it's transportation. The fleet of trucks is used to haul stone and dirt and things of that nature for, it's a subcontractor work for other contractors that require their stone and also dirt to be hauled.
Are they all tandem trucks?
Yes.
Or Mason dumps?
Yeah, most of them are.
Okay, so how many are tandem?
I would say approximately 20 of them are tandem, and there's also some utility trucks, smaller trucks that are used as maintenance trucks to go out on the road if they have to be filled with gas or something like that, mechanic trucks.
Okay, so you're requesting storage of 20 tandem trucks, and that's the truck as well as the back where you put the stone in, correct?
Requesting a total of 25 tandem trucks.
Well, you just specified 20 and 5 utility trucks.
20, there's approximately 20 tandem trucks, 5 utility trucks, a total of 25 vehicles.
Okay, and then the 5 utility trucks are not tandem trucks.
That's correct.
Okay, and you basically you'll pick up quarry process or some type of stone material from a quarry and bring it to a job site somewhere?
That's what the operation does, yes.
Okay, you don't store anything on site, correct?
No.
Other than the trucks and the truck bodies. Okay, thank you.
So I got a question to that end, Mr. King. So you're 25 is the maximum amount of trucks that are on that property at a given time. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then in regards to the material that's in these tandem trucks, you mentioned stone, but you don't store any tires or anything like that. You got a lot of tires on the property, so I would assume that some of these trucks are also transporting tires. Am I not correct in that?
No, that's not correct. The tires that are on the property, which will do a better job of making sure that there's not a stockpile of tires. The tires are old tires that come off the trucks before they get removed from the property. They get stockpiled and they get removed.
What's the ratio of vehicles of these 25 maximum that you have that are like disabled or out of service in a given time versus those that are actively going back and forth between 5 a.m. and 7 p.m.?
The trucks are in service. If the truck is not in service, it's in the garage being worked on to get out. We're not in the business of having trucks that can't produce income. The truck's got to get back on the road as soon as possible.
Okay, so if it's out of the garage, they're all operative, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so the 25 vehicles, that doesn't count the vehicles of your employees going to and from this site. That would be additional, correct?
Yes.
And how many cars are we talking about there? On a given average day?
There's probably about the same amount of cars, probably around 20 cars.
So 20 cars in addition to 25 tandem trucks.
Right. So the cars come in, they get parked, the trucks go out, and then they reverse when at the end of the shift.
And you have office staff, right, there as well?
There's only 2 people in the office.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for this witness?
Yeah, I have another question, if I might. How long have you been using the rear of 50 to the next door property?
I'm going to guess that's going on for probably close to 8 years.
And how long did you have a lease initially?
We have a lease with the tenant, with the property owner next door, Dr. Farhat.
But that's now. Did you have a lease in the beginning?
We didn't have a lease in the beginning. We were paying him for the service of the property, but we didn't have a lease up until this year.
All right.
How many trucks are you looking to eventually grow into?
We're not going to add any trucks. The operation has been running like this for the past 8 years.
Have you received any complaint? Have you received any complaints from the neighbors?
Excuse me?
Have you received any complaints from the neighbors, from the residents?
The only complaint that we've received, which wasn't a complaint, yesterday the attorney, Mr. Rush, spoke to that earlier. The attorney who was on this call wrote an email. They had a subsequent phone conversation asking for certain accommodations, which we've agreed to the 3.5 out of the 4, as he said earlier.
So for 8 years, you are using both the properties. You never had any complaints from the residents?
No.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions?
Are we going to be able to talk to the attorney if he doesn't ask any questions from the apartment buildings?
I think it's up to him, Mr. Jaskowitz. I don't think we go seeking him out. Is that correct, Mr. Ken?
That is correct, but I would recommend that the attorney and this so-called agreement that we've heard about would be memorialized between Mr. Rush and that attorney, and we incorporate that into any resolution if this board so desires to act favorably on this application.
Yeah, because I have questions around that. I mean, I understand, you don't want to endure like a huge amount of expense in regards to, that 10-foot high fence that was alluded to earlier. But I mean, why wouldn't you want to improve the safety in and around that property? Because unlike what the engineer said, you do have residents there. You have houses around, you have apartments around, you have little kids that are around. And I'm just not sure, even from a liability perspective, why you wouldn't want to buffer yourself, no pun intended here, but you would want to protect yourself from any liability of perhaps a kid straying and getting hurt, or another scenario.
I think, as I said earlier at the beginning, my client didn't have an objection to the standard chain link fence that's currently there, making sure that it's in operable condition, and or possibly even putting up some buffering if it required some maybe abrevieties or things of that nature. What he have an objection to, as I mentioned earlier, is that the neighbor had asked for a 10-foot high.
Right, understood. Understood. So when what's the height that your client would even consider? I mean, I would think you would want to lock this property up so nobody can, well, first of all, trespass. And people scale walls and and fences. So I would think you would want to make that as much of a deterrent as humanly possible, and of course within the parameters of whatever expense that your client feels that they could absorb. But I mean, this is not something that a 6-foot high fence is going to take care of, frankly.
With all
That's
due
the code
respect,
permits.
this was addressed 25 years ago, or 23 years ago, 24 years ago, whatever it was. We had extensive
you hear me?
testimony. We had can everybody hear me, by the way?
It's Steve Cochran. Can you hear me?
Excuse me, this is the owner. I want to just what the gentleman was saying.
Wait, hold the phone a minute, hold the phone. We addressed the residential property and in the application back in the 90s. The applicant was satisfied, the neighbor was satisfied with what we did 23 years ago. I want everybody to take that into consideration. This thing's been operating there since the mid-90s. I don't think there's any evidence of vandalism, trespassing. I'm sure Mr. Dillard can confirm that. So let's not try and reinvent the wheel here. Let's deal with the application for the additional piece of property that, as the applicant has been saying, has been operating for the last 8 years.
Well, hold on for a second. Additional piece of property that he encroached on without permission that puts him closer to a residential area. I wasn't here 25 years ago. I'm not going to be gagged with what was decided 25 years ago. It's just something that I'm bringing up.
Hey, can you hear me? It's Steve Cochran calling. Can you hear me?
I think, Mr. Cochran, I think you're out of order at this point.
No,
I'm muted. You have an opportunity to question the witness when I ask for members of the public who have any questions.
And I apologize. I was muted. I just figured out how to unmute myself. All I want to say is we're not holding steady to a 10-foot steel fence. We just want some type of fence to be put in there. And my client has been looking at bollards. Do you know what they are?
Mr. Chairman, again, I would recommend that any resolution of approval, if the board so chooses, would incorporate an agreement between these two, whatever the agreement is between these two attorneys and the property owners. I think that would hopefully satisfy the concern.
That's all we're asking
Very
for.
good point, Mr. Can we proceed now with the test? Are there any other questions of Mr. Duva? I hear none and see none. Mr. Cochran, do you have any questions?
No, I don't.
Thank you, Mr. Cochran. You want to call your next witness, Mr.?
Before we get there, Mr. Chairman, I had a conversation on the improvements back there. They said they weren't going to put any lights up. Given the fact that the encroachment took place without any permits, I think we need some confirmation. Are you going to put lights up or not?
There aren't any lights planned to go up.
That's not the answer.
No.
It's either no or yes.
No.
Okay. Do you have any lights in the existing lot?
Excuse me? No. We have a light on the building. We don't have any parking expansion light, just light on the building.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Rush, your next.
Yes, I'd like to call John McDonough, the applicant's planner.
Hi, everyone.
Mr. McDonough, could you raise your right hand? You swear affirm testimony you're about to give before the board's true so help you God?
Yes, I do.
And for the record, you're a engineered planner, and all your licenses are in full force and effect, and you provide testimony before this board and other boards in the state of New Jersey. Is that correct?
Correct, except I'm not an engineer, just a planner.
Mr. Chairman, the witness has been qualified as an expert in planning.
Hello, Mr. McDonough.
Happy New Year, everyone. Hope everyone's well.
Okay, Mr. McDonough, you've heard obviously a lot of the testimony, some of the questioning that's been going on so far. If you can just provide your review of the property from a planning perspective to the board.
Sure. We've conducted a standard planning analysis of the property, looked at the existing conditions, proposed conditions. We know that New Road is somewhat distinct in its character. in Parsippany. It sort of has a mix of uses, nicely commingling. In past resolutions, going back to the 90s, this site was recognized as a transitional lot between the residential uses that we see out there on 46 and making our way to the non-residential uses over on the 280 side. To form a predicate for my planning conclusions on the use relief that the applicant is seeking, I did put together a packet of maps and photographs to indicate for the board and orient the board as to site condition and site context, which I think are especially relevant here. And Mr. Arcane, with your permission, and if I'm able to share a screen, or if that's able to work its way onto the screen, I'd like to share that.
Go ahead, Mr. McDonough. Do you need our assistance, or can you just do that on your own?
He is a presenter at this point.
Bear with me. Okay, are you seeing my screen, which is a map?
No.
Strike one. We're going to get there. There we go. Okay, we're showing a typical packet that we should usually show the board.
If you could hold for a second. Council, would you like this marked as an exhibit?
I would, because it's colored. I know that this is the drawing, but this is a colored one, so I'd mark it as A1.
A1. And I know there's several beyond this. Do you want to mark them now, or should we just mark them as a brief?
Mr. McDonough knows how we do it, so as he brings them up, we'll mark them.
Okay, very good.
Okay, so was this A1 for the record? I'm sorry.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so A1, sheet number 1 is a simple tax parcel map. It shows the subject property outlined in yellow, which has that somewhat, I'll say, unique boot shape to it with its frontage on New Road. We know that lot 25, the adjacent lot, is also part of the subject to the extent that the rear parking we'll talk about overlaps or is now overextending onto lot 25. But just some of the basics about lot number 26, it's 0.9 acres. It has been, and I'm flipping now over to sheet number 2 as part of A1. This shows the developed condition of the property with the dwelling in the front, storage building in the middle, the parking area in the back, all part of what was approved as part of that 1997 resolution that allowed for, I'll say, this dual use on the property, residential and non-residential uses. To the extent that the applicant is altering that storage building in the middle to incorporate an office type use, it's an alteration of a non-conforming use. So the applicant is asking the board to move on use relief in that regard.
Mr. McDonough, is this marked as A2?
Okay, we'll do this as A2. And again, for the record, A2 is simply going to be an aerial photograph overlaid on top of the tax parcel maps that we showed before. Over on lot number 25, we have a converted residence, which was approved in 2003 for a dental use and a parking area that worked its way in back as well. And then you can see the area in question is in the back portion of that particular site on lot number 25, where you can see, again, around that 25 vehicle parking area that, as I look at aerial photographs, this happened around 2003. It happened, I'd say, within the last 8 to 10 years or so, looking at historical aerial photographs. Now, I thought it was a good question about the fact that this would essentially be moving this use closer to the apartment building in the back. But that said, just to remind the board, flipping back to A1 again, lot 76724 and lot 76723, I was just in front of that board, this board rather, last year for the sanitation facility and the parking of trucks in the back on those 2 particular lots, which was approved by use variance. It's actually closer to that apartment building, and recall that that was an entire parking area that was coming in behind those two particular lots. So to the extent that we look at neighborhood compatibility from a planning standpoint, given what has already been endorsed here, this is a logical continuation, or I'll say an infill of that which flanks this particular area. Truck parking, commercial parking is effectively on both sides of where this parking would go. I think the board has given good consideration to mitigating any impact on that apartment building to the back, with the condition that it needs to be a mutual agreement amongst the parties. Some landscaping, which was also a condition of approval on lots 23 and 24. And then I think the board also introduced, and I've heard the stipulations as to the key no's that would go with this particular application. No outside repairs, no storage of garbage, debris, or waste. Those are similar conditions to what we saw in the other application as well, and I think they're reasonable conditions that would equally apply here as well. Third frame takes us down to Exhibit A3, which is going to be a color-coded land use classification map based on the Mod 4 land use classification system. Everything you see in red is non-residential. Everything you see in gold is residential, and then the gray, the green, distinguishes industrial uses or undeveloped areas. Importantly, those two lots that I just described are shown in gold because they are residential, but they have been approved for non-residential. A4 shows the current zoning of the site. Now, we indicated LIW2/R3 based on what we saw on the tax map, the zoning map in the GIS. We stand corrected based on Chaz's report that we're simply in the LIW2 district. So it's probably just an error in the zone map. It's really irrelevant to the planning considerations anyhow, because dual use is not allowed in either one of those two zones. So again, the applicant is asking to move on relief that we have dual use now on both particular sites. We went out there just before New Year's, floated a drone. This is what you see from New Road with a slightly elevated vehicle, a slightly elevated drone perspective, showing the residential building in the front and the commercial building in the back. Nicely masks that parking area. You get a glimpse of what is actually out there now behind lot number 25, and that's the dental practice in the foreground, and then the parking area behind that. Lastly, we floated it the other way, and this is what you see from the back, with the dwelling on lot 26 in the front, the middle building showing the commercial building, the storage building, and then of course that parking area. And you can visualize how 20 to 25 vehicles would fit in that particular space back there, and the condition of the property. And again, given a sense of the buffering of the surrounding area and the landscape. And again, reminding the board that this area targeted to the left of the proposed use that's before the board has also been approved for a very similar parking lot condition as well.
And these pictures are A5 and A6?
Yes, they are. So with that backdrop, again, in terms of the relief, the use relief for alteration of the pre-existing non-conforming dual use on lot 26, residential and non-residential, use relief for the dual use on lot 25, the extension of the contractor yard, coexisting on the same lot as the dental practice, although there'll be no crossover between the two. In terms of the legal basis for relief, the statutory positive and negative criteria for use relief are met here. In terms of the positive, lot number 25 is particularly suited for this contractor yard because it is flanked by the exact same uses. Lot 26 is particularly suited for office use because it easily adapts into the storage building. Both uses are compatible with the non-residential and transitional character of the area. This is an infill development that will promote the planning goal for efficient use of land. Project will also promote the planning goal for a variety of uses in appropriate locations. New Road has emerged as a transportation corridor, a connector between 46 and 280. We've got the Wawa right down there, and this is a use that I believe is certainly more compatible than being located at the edge or in the heart of a residential neighborhood. Counterbalancing that with the negative criteria, Use relief can be granted without substantial detriment to the public or to the zone plan. The proposed office use is akin to a flex space use, which we often see in industrial areas, partially used for office, partially used for storage. The proposed contractor yard is in what I would qualify as an isolated, confined, concealed space that is unperceivable from New Road. Neither use will interfere with the residential use on lot 26 or the dentist office on lot 25. And in that regard, the degree of departure from the zone scheme is certainly not substantial here. With that, I would offer that the applicant has met its burden under the law and approval is warranted and that the statutory criteria for a grant of relief are met. With that, I'll pause for any questions or redirect.
John, so you agree that buffering that fence, some sort of barrier fence, and maybe some vegetation that would grow maybe to 8 or 10 feet would be substantial across the back?
Yes, I would offer that as a reasonable condition.
Well, do you know how much of a buffer on the adjoining lots was required?
It was an arborvitae row.
It was more than that.
I looked at, I'd have to go back and look at the resolution of approval.
Would you agree to be equal?
Yes, I think that's reasonable.
So when did we approve that? A year ago, 2 years ago? When did we approve it?
It was at the end.
I'm sorry, when?
End of 2019.
And there was a lot of debate, if you remember, Mr. McDonough, in regards to that buffer and the noise and everything else before the vote was taken.
I do, yes.
The concerns about the activity and the intensification of that area in regards to the trucks, the idling, what the residents are going to see, the lights. So, yeah, this is a big concern in this area because there are residents there and they're not going anywhere anytime soon.
Right, and again, just to underscore that resolution, I think that reached a positive resolution.
Do we know if there are any resident objectors here?
Other than 88 Management, it's a 104 unit complex on Edwards Road.
Well, I don't think it's
we only require
that portion of the meeting is not yet here. The chairman will ask for any witnesses of the any questions of this witness, and then when they close, we can open up to any objectors or any people who are concerned.
Any other questions by the board, Mr.
I just have a quick statement. I really have to compliment you on that picture of December 2020 of the property because I pass on New Road and it never looks so good. To a degree, I find it problematic in regards to aesthetics, and I know the engineer addressed it earlier. But at times it's borderline eyesore in the back there. It reminds me of the old, I don't know your familiarity about Montville on 46 coming into the Pine Brook area, that old, junkyard area where they had a lot of the, disabled cars and stuff.
GI Auto Salvage.
I'm sorry? Yeah.
GI Auto Salvage.
Yeah. So, I mean, from the road, it does not look that great. I'm hoping things, it's all about being a good neighbor in this area, in this very unique area, as you so accurately put it, Mr. McDonough. That's all I had to say.
Any other questions of the McDonough? Are there any members of the public that have any questions of Mr. McDonough?
other than what I said before.
You didn't, Mr. Cochran, you don't have any questions of Mr. McDonough, is that correct?
Correct, sir.
Nor are there any hands up?
No hands raised.
Next witness, Mr.
Mr. Chairman, I have no further witnesses. That concludes our presentation for the evening.
Okay. At this time, I'm going to ask if there's any members of the public who wish to speak in opposition to this application.
And just myself on behalf of 88 Management, Mr. Rush and I have come to an agreement on, as he said, 3.5 issues. The only remaining thing is the size and the location of the fence. But I have confidence that we'll be able to resolve that. But I would request that all 4 of our concerns be incorporated into any resolution this board issues.
And I agree with Mr. Cochran.
And that is,
Just the last issue.
and that is the 10-foot fence or not? Is the 10-foot fence part of this agreement?
No, I don't think you brought up a good point earlier, Bill, that we are bound by the height restrictions of the town. My client, as I said, is looking into something called bollox, or they're like expandable things that would stop a runaway truck. Yeah, I haven't heard of them myself. But we have
bollards are not a buffer material. They're safety material.
If I could intervene here, the discussion was the prior application on lots 23 and 24. I found that resolution, and that resolution said the applicant's going to plant 8 to 10 feet green giant trees along the berm of the back of the lot to create a buffer between the residential apartment complex. I don't believe my client has any objection to more or less following along the line so that it actually has a more uniform look to the rear of the properties as well.
The point on that is the green area between the parking area and the property boundary, I believe, was 25 feet. And that,
okay, again, I'm just reading off the resolution.
But Mr. McDonough agreed that it would be appropriate. So I'm not trying to make this hard, but if the testimony says I got the same thing next to me, I want the same, then that's what it should be.
Well, when we're saying a buffer, are we talking about a buffer?
We're talking about the approved plan next door has a green area in the back. It's got some landscaping in there and it's got some fencing. The green space separates the parking area from your property line. Right now, you're not 25 feet off your property line.
And is that subject to the
But that's the testimony of Mr. McDonough that yes, it would be appropriate.
I'd like to recall Mr. McDonough then, because I don't think that's what he was testifying to.
Well, that's what I asked him.
Mr. McDonough, was that your understanding that you were agreeing to a 25-foot buffer coming in off our client's property line? Or were you just agreeing to more or less a line of trees in order to put up some type of buffering and some type of protection to the neighbor in the rear?
The way I understood the question, honestly, was the composition of the plant materials, and I thought it was just arborvitaes there. I don't remember what the width differential was on the other property. I just remember the plantings, some sort of green edge along the perimeter of the property there.
Now, John, in your testimony earlier was that it does appear that there is substantial, I guess, distance between our property line and where the actual units begin, the actual unit, the living area is, correct?
Right. This property is catty corner relative to the apartments, whereas the other development was immediately behind.
So I think what we're talking about agreeing to is some type of, like we said, some type of line of buffering along the property line, with it being a fence or some type of arborvitaes if you want a more uniform look. I don't think we were agreeing to a buffer area of 25 feet coming in off the property line. That's not obviously what we were requesting here.
Well,
that would substantially impact the ability to put the square footage available to park the cars or trucks.
How do we know that?
I'm sorry?
How do we know that it would substantially affect your client?
Well, I have to assume 25 feet coming in off a property line would reduce the 9,000 square feet that are available now.
You said you were only using 4,500 of it.
I didn't say that. I don't, who testified?
Your engineer did.
Yeah.
He testified they're only using 4,500 for the square of the rear property?
Yes, between 45 and 5,000.
I mean, if you go back to the picture of that, I think it was maybe A6 that Mr. McDonough.
Mr. Rush, if I can interject.
Why don't we do
If I can
this?
interject, the property to the north is roughly 4,500 square feet, give or take. Remember, the property to the south, 264, has been in existence since 97. So I'm not sure if Mr. Chadwick is suggesting that you run a 25-foot buffer along the entire rear property line of both properties. But the application is for the northern property, 250, unless I'm mistaken.
Let me interject again. The basic question to John McDonough was, should the transition buffer area be similar and equal to what he described as the approved use variance for the adjoining property? The answer to that was yes. So why don't we just leave it this way? I don't know if it was exactly, I don't keep files forever. And I looked for that and I didn't get it. I couldn't find it. So I don't know if it's 25 feet, 50 feet, or 5 feet, but it was something.
The resolution.
We can agree there was landscaping and fencing. And
the resolution for
the adjoining, that's it.
The resolution for 23 and 25, I mean 23 and what was it? 23 and 22, whatever it was, for the garbage removal, doesn't say anything about feet. It just says they're going to plant green trees along the berm in the back of the lot to create a buffer. I'm not going to agree to 25 feet. That's not part of the testimony. It's not part of this.
Mr. Rush, that's really up to the board, because if the board makes it a condition of any resolution.
No, I understand that. I understand that, Mr. King. I'm just saying, though, that wasn't part of our testimony. And obviously, that's not what we're asking for. We're asking for it to be treated similarly, which is the way I'm reading it, is a line of trees or a fence.
There's a site plan that's involved with that approval. Distance there between the parking area and the back property line. Simple as that.
If it's a safety concern, I believe that Mr. McDonough kind of addressed that by showing that there is a buffering between where the residential units begin and the client's property line. There's about 20, I believe 20 feet or so, 20 to 25 feet or so of property owned by the apartment buildings that's basically buffering land there. We're not right up against the units.
Excuse me, this is Mr. Duba. Is it okay if I speak?
I'm sorry, who was that?
This is Mr. Duba. Would it be okay if I address the board?
Yes.
In my 1997 approval, we have a fence that was installed that's still there. And we also have a green tree line that we could put in there. Behind my property, as Mr. Rush was stating, there is land that's owned by the apartment complex that is used for storage of sometimes when they're doing maintenance to their apartments or so on and so forth. Mr. Cochran can speak to that. We're in a different situation than the new approval that I'm learning about from Garden State Management that's directly abutting their property. We already were approved for the buffer that we have. We want to continue to use that buffer for this property in this previous approval. If we started to add 25 feet inside of our property line, we wouldn't have the ability to run our operation. That would include.
And I don't understand why we just can't continue to buffer. Why can't we just continue the demarcation line from your property onto the property and make it even? If it's work this for, why can't we just continue it along?
That would be fine for me. I could do. Yes, I can do that. I can run the same buffer that I have on 264 up to 250, but I can't agree to do what they're doing on a property that I'm not familiar with.
And you're going to plant, you'll plant a substantial amount of evergreens or some vegetation along that fence line to give a natural buffer to the neighbors?
I will, and like we said earlier, we'd be happy to work along, if we put in the resolution, work with Mr. Cochran, we'll show him what we're planning to do and he'll approve.
existing chain link fence is sort of deteriorated, so that's why we're talking about a new fence.
Yeah, we're happy to do that, Mr. Cochran. We'll put a new fence, and if you'd like us to put some type of hedge, we could put a hedge as well.
We can work that out.
Thank you for that.
Do we have any other questions of the witnesses? We're okay there?
Yeah, Chairman, Chairman, I have a question. There is a report from the Division of Fire Prevention, something about the width of the driveway. Can someone go over that and tell us what you are planning to do?
I can just address the fact that I can state that the width of the driveway was addressed in the 97 resolution, and at this time, there's no planned changes to that. Again, that's property 264, where the driveway is located, and there's no proposed changes to that. So my client's intending on leaving it the way it is.
So you'll comply with the recommendations of the fire department and that letter?
As far as striping and things like that, yes, of course.
And also the width, because I think it's a 22 foot width, and they thought that you wanted to reduce it to 18.
Mr. Duva, can you address that? I'm not sure the actual width of it. Mr. Duva can address that.
Yes, I could address it. We have not made any plan, or we have no reason to reduce the width of the driveway. It's a Belgian block lined driveway that's been there from 1997. We have no intention on making any changes to it.
All right. So you'll comply with the recommendations of the fire department?
I'm not familiar with what they are, but as long as they're striping and things of that nature, that's fine. We're happy to do that.
Yeah, that's basically all it does. It just requires striping.
Okay.
Any other questions by the board? At this point, are there any members of the public that wish to speak in opposition to this application?
There are no hands raised.
In support of the application? No hands raised?
Correct, no hands raised.
Hey, I got a question on this. How is this all noticed? Is this noticed to the landlord of the apartment building and not the actual renters that have these units that face?
That is, Nancy, the tenants do not get notice.
Okay, so they would have no idea this is happening. Okay, thank you.
I'm going to ask if we need to go into conference or if we can just put together a punch list of everything that has to go into the resolution. If everybody would like to add whatever they think, and make sure we discussed everything. What's the call? Conference or no conference?
No, either way.
I take that as a no conference. Okay, so let's discuss everything that needs to be done here. The fence, the vegetation, the hours of operation. Help me out, please.
Yeah. I mean, the condition of the property would be helpful because it is an eyesore.
To maintain the property in a
Better than they have been.
Right. To work with the town forester with regard to the vegetation, to work with the neighbor's attorney to resolve any of those issues that were discussed. Mr. Chadwick, is there anything else? No, nobody has any.
There's the amendment to the note with regard to the compaction of the
Number of vehicles.
parking site, number of vehicles.
Yeah.
And what about the wetlands? Are we going to require a letter?
I think we should. I think we need to be prudent on this.
You get a letter. They get a letter of no assistance from the whoever they're going to file it with.
And also to update the plan for the pervious surface for the gravel parking.
Yeah, good point.
Thank
And there will be no lights in the parking lot.
Right, I was gonna say another one.
And no additional signage?
No additional signage.
John, with regard to, you said a LOI, a letter of what? About the wetlands?
It's a letter of absence or existence, one or the other.
Okay.
And DEP signs off on it.
We need to know the size of the office space they're asking for.
The office space is already there.
But he said he was actually asking for us to approve it.
No.
I don't remember that.
Mr. Rush, is that true that we needed a variance for the?
Again, now, Mr. Duva, is there an office space located on the garage in your property?
Within the garage, there's an office space and there's architectural floor plan for it if the board wants to see it.
And approximately what's the size of that?
I'd be guessing at it.
Well, is it there?
Maybe give or take 800 square feet.
Is it already there?
It's already there.
Right.
Right. And it's strictly for your use. You're not renting out offices, correct?
No.
And it was pre-approved in 1997?
No.
Oh, it didn't show in the 97 plan?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
There we go.
So we had the office approval of approximately 800 square feet plus or minus?
Correct.
Did we get the number of trucks in there?
25.
No, 20 tandems and 5 support.
I would make a recommendation that we vote to authorize the attorney to draw up the resolution in concert with Mr. Rush and Mr. Cochran to make sure we get all these points that everybody's fat, dumb, and happy. Does that sound reasonable?
Yep.
Yes.
Good idea.
Okay, so that last yep, Mr. Detwillens, you just agreed to that resolution?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Do I have a second?
Second, Berkowitz.
Second, Snyder.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Nora, call the roll.
Berkowitz,
Yes.
Berkowitz,
Yes.
Kaplan,
Yes.
Parikh,
Yes.
Ratty,
Yes.
Snyder,
Yes.
Willens,
Yes.
Hurricane.
Yeah. Okay, I want to thank everyone. Now, we have one more case, but it is now 9. Or who's here for the BAPS case?
Chairman, thank you. Members of the board, thank you very much. Have a great evening. Charles, great seeing you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Duva.
Thank you. Thank you to the board.
Is the attorney for BAPS?
Yes, President.
I don't think we're going to be able to hear the case. It's 9:45. And to start the case at this point would be not really beneficial. Therefore, I'm asking Nora to give us a carry date.
I just want to throw out there that next Wednesday, we have a special meeting, the single application. Is it possible we can put this one on the same day?
If we can schedule it subject to the time availability. I don't remember how difficult that case was going to be. That's the one on Hill Road. Do you know if there's any objectives or anything on that, Nora?
Not that I'm aware of.
So we could carry this case to next Wednesday, subject to availability of time, if that's acceptable. Who am I talking to? Who's the attorney, by the way? Is there an attorney here?
Kevin
Desai.
Mr. Desai, you're the attorney representing the applicant?
Yes.
Okay. Would that be acceptable? We'll carry this case next Wednesday night, subject to availability, and we'll do our best to get it's heard, okay?
That should be fine. Thank you.
Okay, do I have a motion to carry this case?
So moved.
Wednesday,
Extensions?
So moved.
any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Nora, is there any other business?
That's it.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Snyder.
So moved.
Second, Johnson.
All in favor?
Happy New Year, all.
Aye.
Thank everyone for your continued service. And, you know, there's been some negative things on Facebook about this being a group and it should be elected officials. I think a lightweight is spreading that around.
Mr. Iverkin.
Yes.
I wanna say I watch you guys do this great work today, and I am very thankful to all of you. And I wanna play golf where you're playing right now.
In Ocean County, the courses don't close. Thank God. I go down there every weekend. That's my part-time residence. But I'm still a resident of Parsippany. That's where I vote. That's where my driver's license. I don't have any questions asked. I'm not a Parsippany resident. So anyway, thank you once again, and we'll go from there. Okay?
Take care, all.
Thank you. Now,
Have a good evening, everyone.
Night. Bye.
Night.
see you in the morning, Casey.
Okay, yeah, see you 7 o'clock.
Okay, bye.
All right, bye.
Night, ready.
Good night.
Night, Nora.
Good night.
Night, John Boy.